we just saw, which I am going to buy several copies of. If the story of women in the revolution would be integrated, then we wouldn't need a separate video for women in the revolution, because women have been an integrated part of the revolution. Many people think because they see certain aspects of the revolution being filmed, only aspects that involve male bodies taking bullets, that have been at the forefront of a very courageous aspect of this revolution. Where are the women? Well, the thing is, the women are part of what got the bodies there, in addition to being also among those whose bodies are being tortured and bulleted by the regime in this revolution. We all know that Dar'a children, it's going way too fast, whoa, back up. The Dar'a children, one of the trigger events in the major narrative of this, how this revolution started, 35 children arrested, ages 9 to 15, and taken up to Damascus to prison. But who got the news of the fact that the remaining dozen of them were being tortured, dozen to 15 children were being tortured, was a woman doctor of Dar'a working in Damascus, phoning, contacting the families, getting leaks from the security, letting them know, and thereby being a vital link in this triggering event. Dr. Aisha Abazi. Okay, flip. Women structurally also are part of what staged the March 16th rally, an enormously triggering event. This was when anywhere from 75 to 200 people gathered at the وزارة الداخلية بدمشق in Marja Square, downtown, the Interior Ministry, in order to demand the release of political prisoners. The way in which they were treated in this never videotaped protest or vigil, اعتصام الأهالي is what it was called in Arabic, never videotaped, every single tape of it was confiscated and broken. But the word spread of how more women than men were arrested, an 80-year-old woman, a 7-month pregnant woman, a 10-year-old boy were beaten and dragged into security vans. The enormity of this happening right in Marja Square, a location full of government buildings whose purpose of service is travestied into a purpose of repression and brutality, was one of the trigger events. And guess who was represented in high concentration at this vigil of families there to get the people out of prison? Dara'ans, because they're doubly hit. Suhail Atassi was one of the organizers, Nahid Badawiya was one of the organizers, Dana Jalaba was a Dara'an woman, a rank-and-file woman who was arrested at it. More women than men were imprisoned and beaten. It doesn't really matter the numbers, but enormous numbers, more than who were eventually imprisoned and those who were eventually charged, were actually beaten horrendously in Marja Square under the eyes of everyone in Damascus. Nahid Badawiya is one of the organizers. Hind Labwani, who's on the end there, is one of the organizers. Another way that women have been an integral part on the ground is that women preheated it. We all know revolutions need preheating, just like ovens. The Khalid Malouhi, when things began to boil and the Ghalghalu in Syria back at the beginning of the year, Khalid Malouhi's imprisonment, which had been ongoing for 2 years, she was sentenced on February 5th. Another one of the triggering pre-events. Suhail Atassi, as was mentioned good in the video, began organizing Damascus civil disobediences on January 26th, flip. And those several events repeatedly trained, let's flip the slide, trained people in civil disobedience on January 26, 27, 28, 29. On February 2nd, they were beaten. Look at them. Ostensibly, it's for Egypt and then for Libya. And you know what they're singing in that moment? They're singing, and they knew it was for them. And so, March 12th, we also have one of the preheating events. Harveen Osi, one of the key field organizers, a member in a Kurdish party, raised 3 slogans at this March 12th commemoration of Kurdish losses in 2004 and 2008. She said, release the prisoners, end martial law, end freedom. The same slogans that were then raised on March 16th and that then were raised on March 18th and indeed throughout the revolution. This is the march rally led by Harveen. Of course, there were many, I'm going to skip over the prisoners. There were many prisoners of conscience. Early after the massive demonstrations, 300,000 to 400,000 on March 18th broke out. One of the earliest voices we heard on broadcast news was the frail elderly voice of Muntaha al-Atrash, whose content was neither frail nor elderly, but was very strong, and saying things that she managed to get out on the news and in person, at rallies, at funerals. Other early voices that were not afraid to be publishing and speaking on the secular end, Khawla Dunya on the Islamic non-violence end, Hanan Laham happens to be a cousin of mine as well. Khawla Dunya also happens to be one of the early ground journalists, Alawite voices, powerful voice in the revolution. Of course, then we saw the mass rallies. About every dozen to 15 rallies, you had a rally that was all women. Ted, which happens to be my husband's, this turns out to be this huge family commercial, doesn't it? It happens to be my husband's hometown, but I'll say this for them. Ted, Syria was one of the earliest places with protests in general, and also with specifically women's protests. You have, of course, on the rank and file, many such as the beheaded, hands cut off, limbs cut off, feet cut off, burned, tortured, and probably raped. And let's not cover up rape as an act of torture. It's an act of torture just like any other, and a woman also earns a badge of honor for it, just like a man earns a badge of honor for other forms of torture. Apparently, just a quickie I'm going to throw in, Khalid Abu Saleh on Al Jazeera said that he would stand testifying for this, that there are 18 women being held on a Shabiha rape farm outside Homs, one being killed and released each day, and Zainab was possibly one of them. Let's go on to the next slide. Just go on through imprisoned, people who have been imprisoned throughout all of this, you can look this information up. And then the behind the scenes rank and file, the journalists and the anonymous and non-anonymous support systems online, on the internet, getting pictures out, getting crucial communications places connected together. Rank and file activists, let's skip the abroad ones, let's just go. The superstars, of course, big cheers for the Syrian Red superstars. These and many others, Muna Wasif, Asala Nasri, Ruya Ibrahim. Again, and then women of the SNC, underrepresented at first, but more are being added, more were invited than was announced. Let's keep going, and that number is rising daily. Dima Musa was just added to it, and all the inside gangs are withheld for their safety. Many other others, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and let's just wrap up what they come from. Every ethnicity, here's a nice cross-section, every ethnicity, religion, and community in Syria, including Syria's Palestinians, who are a wonderful part of this revolution in solidarity. Women rock the Syrian revolution.